Hi, you fellas. What if I told you most people completely misunderstand the Matrix sequels?
Bullshit.
These films have been called messy, confusing, even unnecessary. But dodge this. They contain one of the most brilliantly structured narratives ever put to screen. The problem? That brilliance is buried under layers of complexity that most people never fully decode. Today, we're unlocking the Matrix once and for all by answering two key questions. What can we as writers learn from the Wachowskis' overly complex yet ambitious storytelling? And are the sequels actually better than you remember? Denial is the most predictable of all human responses. To help you get the most out of this video, I've divided it into 4 parts. I'll explain the fundamental ideas that are crucial to understanding the story, concepts that unlock everything that follows. We'll break down the narrative framework of the trilogy, plot points, pinch points, and key turning points in each film. We'll analyze Neo's pivotal conversations with the Oracle in Reloaded, the Architect in the same film, and the Oracle again in Revolutions. This will allow us to connect all the pieces and finally make sense of what's really going on. Finally, we'll explore common criticisms of the sequels, as well as alternative interpretations that have emerged over time. And once we have the full picture, you'll be able to form your own opinion. Was The Matrix a worthy trilogy? Or was it just a great movie with 2 weak sequels? More than anything, I want you to walk away with valuable insights, techniques, methods, and a deeper understanding of complex storytelling that you can apply to your own creative work. Let's begin.
Hello there, I'm Henrik. I created the Organized Writer and all the videos on it. No AI-generated scripts, just my words. I love the Matrix trilogy, and I firmly believe you can too. Bear with me, you're not going to regret this. Since my time is limited, as with other videos on the channel, I decided to let this guy do the narration.
Yes, me. Me.
Oh, stop it.
All right, let me start by talking about the most incredible thing about these 3 films. The Wachowskis managed to create a story that has been interpreted through the lenses of philosophy, religion, and mythology. But in my view, everything in The Matrix is ultimately rooted in logic and human psychology.
God damn it. Not everyone believes what you believe.
My beliefs do not require them to, and in this video, I'm going to prove it to you. Unfortunately, no one can be told what The Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself, and this is where perhaps the biggest mistake the Wachowskis made in writing the sequels comes in. The trilogy began with a brilliantly structured hero's journey, Neo's story. A masterful implementation of Campbell and Vogler's storytelling frameworks. I discuss this more in this other video, where I compare the structural similarities and differences between Star Wars, The Matrix, Harry Potter, and Moana. Link in the description below. The first film resonated with audiences for many reasons, but one of the most important aspects of its storytelling was how it left us with a multitude of unanswered questions. Questions that fueled our curiosity. The storytelling was built on wonder and intrigue. It seems, however, that in the sequels, the Wachowskis wanted to go deeper, to answer every single question in detail. But at the same time, they didn't want to lose the sense of mystery that defined the first film. Unfortunately, this led to a level of complexity that many struggled to digest. But it ends tonight. By the time you finish watching this video, you'll fully understand the story and be able to form a new opinion on the sequels. Let's start by examining the major forces that drive the story. If we compare the Matrix trilogy to a well-known epic like The Lord of the Rings, we see 2 clear opposing sides. The forces of evil, Sauron, his armies of orcs and his loyal followers, and the forces of good, our hero, his allies, and the armies fighting for freedom. The dynamics of the story unfold through relationships, character conflicts, and large-scale battles between these 2 factions. The same structure exists in Star Wars and countless other iconic franchises. But The Matrix does something different. While it's not the only story with multiple antagonists and complex power structures, The Matrix takes it a step further. Some of the most influential forces in the story operate behind the scenes in ways so intricate that we don't even realize whose side they're actually on and how much control they have over the story's outcome. It's only when you revisit the films and start piecing things together that you begin to see the full picture. To make sense of it, let's map out the key players and their motivations. At first glance, The Matrix follows the same dualistic conflict as other trilogies, humans versus machines. But then there's Smith. Smith isn't the ultimate leader of the machines. He isn't their Sauron or Emperor Palpatine. The real power shaping the story lies elsewhere. There's another key figure, someone who appears to be on the side of humanity. She doesn't fight for control with brute force, like the machines. She doesn't impose her will through direct attacks like Smith. Instead, she uses psychological manipulation, the human way. I'm talking, of course, about the Oracle. At first glance, the Oracle might seem like a traditional mentor figure, much like Obi-Wan guiding Luke in Star Wars. But make no mistake, she is not just a wise guiding presence. She plays a far deeper and more manipulative role, one that we will break down later in this video. Beyond these central figures, we have the natural conflicts between human characters. Smith's seemingly separate agenda, which exists outside of the main war between humans and machines. And then, looming over it all, we have the architect, the mastermind behind the entire system itself. And to make things even more complicated, all of this unfolds across two different worlds, each with its own set of rules. Is it really any wonder that so many people struggle to make sense of it all? Like many great stories, the Matrix trilogy is filled with underlying themes and messages woven between the lines. If the films are guilty of anything, it's having too much to say rather than too little. The topics they explore are just as relevant today as they were when the films were made. At its core, The Matrix is about free will versus control, and the blurred line between reality and illusion. What is real? How do you define real? The films also explore the intersection between biology and technology, raising important questions about artificial intelligence. Not just the classic robots taking over the world trope, but a deeper discussion on the role AI plays in shaping reality. Relationships and emotions play a role in the first film, but they are presented in a fairly traditional way. It's in the two sequels that The Matrix takes things further, blending the concepts of emotions and artificial intelligence. We've all heard these arguments before, whether in real-life conversations or in movies. Machines can't feel. Robots expressing emotions is fake. But what are emotions, really? Yes, they are influenced by biochemistry, but they are also tied to memory. We feel things based on what we've done, seen, heard, and experienced. Our memories shape our choices and emotional reactions. Now, apply this to artificial intelligence. An AI can store memories based on experiences and interactions. It can learn patterns and associate different stimuli with different responses. Over time, its reactions are shaped by past encounters, just like human emotions are. So if a digital entity exists in a human-like environment, engaging with other beings, making decisions based on past experiences, at what point does its response become indistinguishable from emotion?
No, it is a word. What matters is the connection the word implies.
Everyone will have their own opinion on this, but here's the key point. If every other aspect of a digital being is designed to mirror humanity, wouldn't it make sense for it to develop something equivalent to human emotion? Not because it was programmed to react a certain way, but because its reactions naturally emerge from its accumulated experiences, just like ours. This theme has always sparked debate, and as our society becomes increasingly digital, it only grows more relevant. Few films have explored this idea as deeply as The Matrix trilogy, and while much of it is discussed in key dialogues, it is also woven into the very fabric of the story itself, perhaps too well. In addition to its overarching themes, The Matrix trilogy revolves around three fundamental concepts that run like a red thread through the films. The first of these is control. The Matrix is a vast and incredibly complex system. The digital world contains a massive number of interconnected entities, including both humans and programs, all working together to govern every aspect of the simulation, from the trees and animals to the fundamental laws of nature and physics. The purpose of this is simple. Humans must perceive their reality as real. As long as they believe in the illusion, they will continue to function as biological batteries, fulfilling the machine's need for energy. But maintaining this level of control is no easy task. A simulation of this scale requires enormous amounts of data and processing power, making it impossible to manage every detail with absolute precision. The architect, the creator of the Matrix, understood this problem. Over time, he experimented with different methods to ensure that humans did not question their existence, attempting to prevent them from rejecting the system and starting a rebellion. Every machine has a defined purpose. This is a fundamental aspect of their programming. No program can exist within the digital world unless it serves a function. This acts as a control mechanism, ensuring that no digital entity remains active once it no longer serves the system's objectives, namely maintaining a realistic and believable simulation for the humans trapped inside. In this way, it mirrors biological life. Just as animals and plants exist for a time and then perish, so too must programs fulfill their purpose and then be erased. The system is designed so that once a program has completed its function, it is deleted. However, there's a challenge. These programs do not run on a single centralized machine, but rather within a distributed system. As a result, programs are responsible for deleting themselves once their purpose has been fulfilled. Those who control the system can therefore ensure that no program operates beyond its intended function and that no rogue elements threaten the delicate balance of the matrix. We all know that humans don't like being forced into anything. The architect learned this the hard way. In earlier versions of the Matrix, he attempted to manipulate humans into accepting the artificial world as their reality. He explains this in his remarkable conversation with Neo in Reloaded, which we'll analyze later. The problem? Too many people rejected the illusion. Even though they had no logical reason to question their existence, something felt off, and they eventually broke free and rebelled against their false reality. To maintain control, the architect had to give them a greater sense of freedom, not just by feeding them fabricated events like watching a movie where everything is predetermined, but by allowing their own minds to influence the world around them, forcing the system itself to react. More like a video game, where your actions actually affect the environment. It's important to note, this wasn't his idea.
Thus the answer was stumbled upon by another.
More on that in a moment. This is where the true depth of the story becomes apparent. While many stories have explored virtual realities, few have ever gone this deep, examining the interconnected relationship between a digital system and human consciousness. This is an incredibly challenging concept to integrate into a narrative. The first time I watched the films, I was left with many unanswered questions, but I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life. And after analyzing the trilogy in detail, I now see just how brilliantly this concept is woven into the entire story. That said, the high level of complexity means that these films reward multiple viewings. Unless, of course, you believe ignorance is bliss, and decide that any level of confusion must mean poor storytelling. But complex storytelling isn't new to cinema. It often comes down to how willing we are as an audience to engage with the ideas presented, just like in any other story that truly moves us. Speaking of choice, it's time for you to make one. You take the blue pill, and the story ends. You wake up in your bed without any connection to future videos on this channel. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep my list of planned future videos goes. Remember, all I'm offering is a subscription. To understand the control mechanisms that shape humanity's struggle against the machines, and Neo's role as the One, we first need to understand how the Matrix itself functions. The machines needed a power source and found the human body to be the most efficient option. To keep humans passive and unaware, they created a virtual replica of reality, a world that perfectly emulates physical laws and everything else that makes up real existence. This system feeds images and sound and other senses directly into the human brain, while simultaneously receiving impulses from the brain, translating them into movement, perception, and interaction within the simulated world. In order to maintain the illusion of reality, the system had to give humans a sense of free will, allowing them to act within the physical laws dictated by the simulation. Choice. The Matrix operates as a distributed system. The world is not controlled from a single location, but is instead maintained through a vast network of programs and human interactions, both working together to sustain the illusion. Humans live within the artificial world, unknowingly generating energy for the machines, while programs execute various functions to keep the simulation running smoothly. Because of its distributed nature, humans outside the Matrix have found ways to hack into the system, allowing them to jack in and interact with the virtual world, despite existing in the real one.
We broadcast our pirate signal and hack into the Matrix.
The rules and level of detail that govern the Matrix are insanely complex. This level of complexity is necessary to ensure absolute realism, fooling all five senses so that humans truly believe in the illusion. If the detail level were any lower, if the world looked and behaved more like a semi-realistic video game, people would start to notice the cracks. They would reject it. Instead of dumping all of this information through an overwhelming exposition scene, the Wachowskis visualize the complexity in the opening sequences of each film. We start with a large, expansive view of the city. Then the camera zooms in, layer by layer, until we are deep inside the details of a clock mechanism or a phone line. A visual experience says more than 1,000 words. What if I told you the Oracle is behind the entire war, Smith's uprising, and even the love between Neo and Trinity?
You're cuter than I thought.
Speaking of, have you seen these before? You probably have. But did you know that Morpheus never actually says, "What if I told you," anywhere in the films? He does say things like, "What if you were unable to wake from that dream?" And the Oracle says, "I told you before. No one can see beyond a choice they don't understand." But never, "What if I told you?" The biggest challenge the machines faced with their human batteries was that some of them rejected reality, leading them to rebel against their forced existence. They didn't believe in the world around them. Enter the problem solver. If there's any doubt left, let's make it clear. The Oracle is an artificial intelligence.
You're not human, are you?
Well, it's tough to get any more obvious than that.
She is a program from the machine world, but she is unlike any other AI we see in the films. She plays both sides, but unlike other machine programs, she doesn't just see humans as pawns in a grand game. Instead, she has spent years studying human psychology, not just to understand how they function, but to learn what drives them, what influences their decisions, and what makes them choose one path over another. She is essentially a highly advanced machine learning algorithm, having analyzed human behavior down to the smallest detail, to the point where she can predict with near certainty how any given situation will unfold. This allows the story to explore human values, to see them from an external perspective, and most importantly, to use them as an intricate piece of the plot itself. Have you ever been in a conversation, watching a movie, or in any situation where, even though you technically don't know what's going to happen next, you just sense it, and then moments later it happens exactly as you expected? Your brain subconsciously analyzes the situation, comparing it to past experiences, your understanding of the people involved, and predicts the most likely outcome. This is exactly what the Oracle does.
Did you always know?
Oh, no. No, I didn't. But I believed.
When Neo visits her in the Matrix, she doesn't actually know for sure that he's going to knock over the flower vase. She has simply analyzed the situation so thoroughly. His movement patterns, motor skills, mindset, emotions, and his response to the things she says, that she knows, with a very high probability, that he will knock it over. Her deep understanding of the world, combined with the way she communicates with humans and builds trust, allows her to manipulate events toward her desired outcome. And she does this on a much greater scale than most people realize, unless you carefully analyze every dialogue and detail across all three films. It's when you start to grasp all of this that the true brilliance of the trilogy begins to emerge. The only reason the first film didn't create more confusion than excitement is that it didn't dive too deeply into these layers. Instead, it kept things broad and open-ended, masking its complexity and mystery and wonder, exactly like the Oracle does throughout her entire plan. Additionally, The Matrix was built on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, which makes it feel structurally familiar. The problem the Oracle faces is that her deep understanding of humans has made her reject the way the architect maintains control. Unlike him, she doesn't want humanity to be sacrificed just to keep the Matrix stable. So she has devised a complex plan to solve the problem, without following the architect's cold, calculated method of control. The architect's challenge is twofold. Much like when we create engaging stories, we think about external and internal conflict. For the Matrix, there is an external threat, humans who have escaped the system want to attack the machine world to free those still enslaved. And an internal threat, an increasing number of humans inside the Matrix begin to reject their reality. A small percentage of people experience this rejection instinctively, like Neo at the start of the first film. But beyond that, others start noticing cracks, glitches in their world that make them question whether their reality is truly real. This can happen in two ways. When they are directly told the truth by outsiders like Morpheus, Trinity, and the human resistance, or when they witness unexplained phenomena, something that the sequels showcase more extensively. Aside from those the resistance manages to free, there are other ways doubt can threaten the operational stability of the Matrix. If too many people begin acting outside the system's defined rules, it can trigger a domino effect, causing more people to question their reality. And if enough humans reject the Matrix at the same time, it could lead to a complete collapse of the virtual world. This would be catastrophic for the machines, as it would disrupt their energy supply and threaten their very existence. Beyond that, the Matrix may not even be capable of handling rejection on a technical level. It was never built to accommodate people questioning their reality. It was designed only for one purpose: to convince everyone that the reality they are given is real. At first, this might seem like a flaw in the design, but when you consider the insane complexity of the Matrix, it makes sense. Every human connected to the system is constantly transmitting and receiving a staggering amount of data. Every sensory experience, sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell, must be fully simulated at all times. Every tiny muscle movement is translated into realistic interactions inside the virtual world. Meanwhile, their real bodies remain motionless, serving only as energy sources for the machines. Choice. The problem is choice. Now imagine trying to program this system to not only account for every possible way a person might react to discovering the illusion, but to also prevent that knowledge from spreading to others. The architect's answer to this problem is simple. He must restore 100% belief in the illusion, and the only way to do that is to reset the entire system. Everything is wiped clean. The world is restored to its early 20th century setting. Buildings, objects, and surroundings are reset. All human batteries are brain-wiped. Their memories are erased. They restart their lives with no recollection of any previous doubts. For this reset to work, however, it must be synchronized with the complete destruction of Zion, eliminating all humans who escaped and threatened the system. With this, both the external and internal threats are eliminated, and the artificial world can run smoothly for another century before the same process repeats again. This cyclical reset isn't just about maintaining order. It also allows the machines to control history itself. By always restoring the Matrix to the same historical time period, they can predict and manipulate the course of human events with greater precision each time. What's harder to control, however, is what happens outside the Matrix, in the real world. But that's where the Oracle's genius comes into play. She has devised a way for machines and programs inside the Matrix to influence real-world events, using the same technique she always does: intricate human manipulation. This process is what they call the path of the One. The machines have a built-in control mechanism designed to contain the human rebellion in the real world. They cultivate a symbol, a figure of legend, someone with extraordinary powers far beyond those of ordinary humans. This is yet another example of how the sequels dive deeper into the mystery behind Neo's status as the One. In the first film, he was simply presented as a supernatural figure, almost religious in nature. A stark contrast to the otherwise technological and physics-based realism of The Matrix. But Reloaded and Revolutions peel back the layers, revealing the carefully constructed system behind it all. Path of the One is a process created by the Oracle, a mechanism that allows the machines to guide the humans in the real world toward an inevitable outcome. It leads them down a predetermined path, allows the machines to neutralize the resistance before it becomes too powerful, and at the same time it ensures the Matrix can be reset, preventing the illusion from breaking down due to widespread doubt. We get some of the details of this process in Neo's cryptic conversation with the architect in Reloaded, but many other pieces are revealed throughout the trilogy. The Path of the One isn't just a concept, it is programmatically embedded into the very structure of the Matrix. That's why Neo's superhuman abilities allow him to defeat agents when other humans stand no chance against them. His unique skills, his ability to bend the laws of physics, to fly, and even his connection to the real world, which we'll discuss later, are all part of the system's design. The architect refers to this as the prime program, a foundational piece of code that governs how the One interacts with the Matrix. To those familiar with storytelling terminology, this might seem like plot armor. However, unlike in most films where a protagonist miraculously survives against all odds, Neo's plot armor is an actual plot device, a deliberate feature of the system itself. His abilities, combined with the Oracle's guidance, help shape him into a symbol, a leader that humanity will follow. Humans already see the Oracle as a trusted guide, a source of answers for the questions they cannot understand. Because she possesses a level of foresight that no human does, she is able to shape the One into a figure of legend. For some, this belief becomes an obsession, a life's mission to find the One and help him fulfill his destiny. And just like everything else, the Oracle has carefully selected exactly who should take on this role. She has studied and analyzed the humans in the Matrix, identifying those with the right combination of skills, determination, and blind faith. Those most likely to dedicate their lives to finding and supporting the One.
What did she tell you? That I would find the One.
The path of the One is not a single event. It is an ongoing process that plays out over decades, once in every iteration of the Matrix. Once the humans find the One, they see it as a miraculous moment, something almost impossible to believe. And just when they feel unstoppable, another key figure enters the picture, pun intended. Knowing now how much of this process is scripted by the Oracle, it's fascinating to revisit the dialogue in the films. What once seemed vague and religious now becomes entirely logical and carefully designed.
Only the One can open the door, and only during that window can the door be opened. We do only what we're meant to do.
How do you know all this?
I know because I must know. It is my purpose.
Ask yourself how the Keymaker knows all this. Like that of all objects in the virtual world, he has prepared a key for this particular motorcycle. Is he an omniscient program analyzing the future, or does he get his information from someone else?
It is a pickle, no doubt about it.
The next step is to reach the source. The humans don't understand why the One must go there, nor do they know what he will do once he arrives. They blindly trust the Oracle's guidance, convinced that this is the only path to humanity's survival.
God damn it, not everyone believes what you believe.
But they don't need everyone to believe, just enough people to convince the rest to follow them. Every step in this journey is so difficult to achieve that when the resistance succeeds, they feel like they've achieved the impossible. This only reinforces their belief that they are on the right path. The road to reaching the source is incredibly challenging, but every step is fed to them word for word by the Oracle.
You can save Zion if you reach the source, but to do that you will need the Keymaker.
After overcoming the Merovingians' obstacles,
Nom de Dieu de putain de bordel de merde de saloperie de connard d'enculé de ta mère.
and retrieving the Keymaker, the One reaches the Oval Room where he meets the Architect. Along the way, humans are given the illusion of choice, but as the Merovingian states, choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without. In reality, they are simply taking what feels like the only logical path, because every circumstance has been meticulously engineered by the Oracle. By the time the One reaches the Architect, his entire journey, training, and symbolic role have instilled in him a deep responsibility for humanity's future. This is essentially a character arc, but unlike a traditional narrative, this isn't just something a writer designed to create emotional impact. It's a real scripted transformation, carefully orchestrated by the Oracle and the Architect. Here's an interesting part of Path of the One. The Matrix's entire control system is structured so that the One is the only one who can reset it. The machines cannot trigger the reset themselves. It must happen at the exact planned moment, as part of Path of the One. This ensures that everything unfolds as expected, but it also means the machines are dependent on humanity, just as much as humanity is dependent on them. While the films don't confirm it outright, it seems likely that this was the Oracle's doing, a deliberate design choice to ensure that the machines could never have absolute control. This is also why, in the 6th iteration of the Matrix, she changes the plan. leading to the version of the One that finally breaks the cycle. More on that later. This is the true purpose of the One. Just like programs return to the source when they are deleted, the One must return to the source to save humanity. In reality, this allows the architect to reset the Matrix, wiping the memories of all humans inside, and destroy Zion, eliminating the threat of further resistance. The system is then reset, and the cycle begins again, until Neo, the first one to reject the system entirely. And as we'll soon see, this was the Oracle's plan all along. The Oracle, essentially the closest thing the machine world has to a psychologist, knows that humans are far easier to control when they believe they've made their own choices. It's not enough to tell them what to do. They need to feel like they chose it themselves.
We've already made the choice. Now you have to understand it.
She crafts a prophecy, a belief system that convinces humans that there is hope. She feeds them the idea that somewhere out there, a force exists that is strong enough to break all boundaries and save humanity from the machines. And here's the key part. The prophecy is based on real events, but the circumstances surrounding them are a lie. There is no spoon. When the Matrix was first built, there was a man born inside who had the ability to change whatever he wanted, to remake the Matrix as he saw fit. It was he who freed the first of us, taught us the truth. As long as the Matrix exists, the human race will never be free. After he died, the Oracle prophesied his return and that his coming would hail the destruction of the Matrix, end the war, bring freedom to our people. That is why there are those of us who have spent our entire lives searching the Matrix, looking for him. This was the first step in the process, set in motion after the previous iteration of the One returned to the source. But who exactly is this first person Morpheus speaks of? Let's break this down logically. The previous one did exactly what the machines wanted. He followed the same path as his predecessors and obeyed the architect's instructions.
Interesting. That was quicker than the others.
So now we have a mysterious figure, someone who had the power to change the Matrix in ways no one else could. The phrase "born inside" is open to interpretation, but we know that this person was inside the Matrix, and we don't have a clear answer as to whether they also existed in the real world. But let's consider what the machines need during this phase, based on what the architect tells Neo.
After which you will be required to select from the Matrix 23 individuals, 16 female, 7 male, to rebuild Zion.
Everything follows a specific sequence, carefully orchestrated to steer humans in a controlled direction. And now we have a key figure, someone with godlike control over the Matrix. But this person isn't the One, because the One must still be found later. And it isn't the previous the One, because that person would know exactly how the system works. The previous one is likely either eliminated or brainwiped, just like everyone else when the Matrix is reset. This mysterious figure begins the process by freeing individuals who are starting to question reality, gathering them in Zion, where the machines know exactly where they are. On the surface, it looks like the beginning of a rebellion, a step toward freedom from the Matrix. In reality, it's a controlled containment strategy, a way to group the defectors into one place, making them easy to eliminate when the next reset cycle begins. The most logical explanation is that it's the architect himself, or at the very least, a program under his control, sent into the Matrix to play the role of a savior. This figure leads the first group of freed humans, demonstrates supernatural abilities, reinforcing their belief in the prophecy, and directs them toward the exact steps outlined in Path of the One, ensuring they unknowingly follow the machine's plan. But if the architect can do this, why doesn't he just play the role of the One in every iteration? The answer is simple. Humans don't just need a leader inside the Matrix. They need a figure to rally around in the real world, too. The Oracle serves as the guide inside the Matrix, carefully shaping the narrative and nudging people toward the predetermined path. Neo serves as the figurehead in the real world, giving humans a cause to believe in, a symbol of hope and rebellion, even though he is ultimately playing into the machine's hands. Neo is, quite literally, the control mechanism of the machines in the real world. They build him up, ensuring that he will do exactly what they need him to do, so that the system can reset again, and the machines can continue their existence. And now, we come to the big question. Why does Neo choose the opposite door from all his predecessors? The Path of the One has followed the same script for every iteration, but this time there's one major difference.
Trinity.
Neo, whose name is an anagram for one, is selected to carry the Prime program. The Oracle ensures that Morpheus and the Resistance will find him, but only after such a difficult and costly journey that they feel they have achieved something truly extraordinary. But why him? Surely this isn't random. Hidden deep within this complexly layered story, one theme emerges. Love is the key to peace. The Oracle has used love as a tool in her plan, and the consequences of this choice are greater than they seem. Instead of allowing the machines to destroy Zion, killing all freed humans, and instead of wiping every connected human's mind to reset them into a new iteration of the Matrix, the Oracle wants to create peace. A reset shouldn't be necessary. But making this happen isn't as simple as just sitting down and negotiating. The Path of the One is deeply embedded in the fabric of the system, and neither humans nor machines believe in the possibility of peace. So, as always, the Oracle does what she does best. She manipulates human psychology and uses the mechanisms already in place to redirect the entire process. Previously, the One's purpose had always been framed as a higher calling for humanity. But now, the Oracle introduces something new, something far more personal than duty, the overwhelming power of love. She plants the first seed.
She told me.
For all we know, she may have carefully chosen two individuals with just the right chemistry, two people with a high probability of forming a deep connection, and then she ensures that the Prime program ends up in one of them.
The Oracle told me that I would fall in love and that man that I loved would be the one.
She plays matchmaker in the shadows.
I can see why she likes you.
Who?
Not too bright, though.
Suddenly, the One has a new reason to make a different choice. This tilts the scale, causing Neo to reject the Source and refuse to reset the Matrix. Not everyone is happy about this.
But we already know what you are going to do, don't we?
I want the same thing you want, Neo.
The end of the war.
But love alone isn't enough to achieve peace. To succeed, the Oracle must also convince the other side. And for that, she has placed her bets on a highly calculated, extremely risky part of her plan, one that involves everyone's favorite agent.
Smith.
Smith begins as a typical agent, one of the machine enforcers inside the Matrix, tasked with hunting down potential red pills and stopping those who hack into the system from the outside. But despite this, there's something different about him. We notice it as early as the first film when he interrogates Morpheus. Unlike the other agents, Smith expresses hatred for the Matrix. He resents his own existence, speaks with disgust about humans, and longs to break free, to escape the system.
I must get free.
This is not normal behavior for an agent, and there's a reason for that. Smith has been reprogrammed by the Oracle. This might seem like an assumption without evidence, but let's look at the information we're actually given throughout the trilogy and how it fits into her greater plan. At the end of The Matrix, Neo fully embraces his role as the One. The Prime program allows him to do things no one else in the Matrix can do, but he still needs to go through a long training process and a deep character arc to reach his full potential. But Neo isn't the only one who changes. Smith also returns with new abilities in Reloaded. If anyone thinks this was just a convenient choice to create an engaging antagonist for the sequels, somehow Smith has returned. Then it's worth taking a closer look at the circumstances behind his transformation. Smith's powers could only have come from those who control the structure of the Matrix itself, and there are only two entities with that kind of influence: the Architect, who maintains the logic and balance of the Matrix, and the Oracle, who understands human nature and how to manipulate it.
If I am the father of the Matrix, she would undoubtedly be its mother.
With this in mind, we can analyze the cryptic details that the Wachowskis embedded in Neo's conversations with both of them throughout the films. Conversations we will soon break down in full to eliminate all confusion. By changing Smith, the Oracle is taking a huge risk, but in reality there is no way for this plan to fail, as we'll soon see. Her goal is simple. Smith's threat must become so great that the machines have no choice but to rely on Neo.
Program Smith has grown beyond your control. Soon he will spread through the city as he spread through the Matrix. You cannot stop him.
Thus, Neo becomes a martyr, a figure seen by both humans and machines as the savior who brought peace. At a surface level, this might seem like a religious or philosophical resolution to the story, but everything actually has clear, logical connections, and once we break it down, the entire trilogy makes perfect sense. Beyond his new abilities, Smith still harbors intense hatred for humans and the Matrix alike. This is no coincidence, because this hatred is exactly what the Oracle needs him to feel in order for him to serve his role in her plan.
Your hate has made you powerful.
Smith's blind rage drives him to take control of every avatar in the Matrix. By the end of Revolutions, he has almost completely assimilated the entire system, with Neo as the last remaining exception. But why does he have the ability to take over other avatars? Even Smith himself doesn't fully understand what has happened to him. He expresses this confusion to Neo in Reloaded.
I don't fully understand how it happened.
He doesn't know why he can overwrite other avatars. He simply says that he feels compelled to do it. But what does that sound like? It mirrors his words about Neo in the first film, about being compelled to break free.
I want everything.
His ego and hunger for power take over, and the world building of the Matrix tells us exactly who has the ability to alter the system on this level. The architect, who only seeks to balance the equation, or the Oracle, who operates through subtle but powerful manipulations. And we know it wasn't the architect who changed Smith. Because as the Oracle explains to Neo, the architect is incapable of seeing beyond his own choices. He isn't interested in creating change, only in maintaining control. That leaves one option. The Oracle is the one who gave Smith his new abilities. And when we look at her larger plan, it makes perfect sense. She has altered Path of the One in the 6th iteration of the Matrix, and Smith is her key. The architect doesn't like Path of the One. He only tolerates it because it is a necessary evil to prevent the system from collapsing. His ideal world is one where no human ever doubts the Matrix in the first place.
You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate.
But now the Oracle has changed the balance of power.
Bingo.
She has ensured that the machines are just as dependent on humans as humans are dependent on the machines. And now, everything is set for the final step. Smith himself says it best.
That is the sound of inevitability.
You were right, Smith. It was inevitable.
But Smith doesn't understand why this outcome is inevitable. He believes that once he assimilates Neo, he will finally have total control over the Matrix. He assumes this will make him unstoppable, able to do whatever he pleases. But remember, when Smith takes over an avatar, the human behind it doesn't die. They are simply overwritten, while Smith gains access to all their memories, data, and system information. We see this when he takes over the Oracle. She asks him about Sati, and another Smith repeats a line the Oracle said to Sati earlier in the film.
Cookies need love like everything does.
At this point, the stage is set. The two most central characters in the trilogy, the protagonist and antagonist, are about to collide in a battle of cataclysmic proportions. Smith is convinced he is going to win, and in a way he does. He defeats Neo and assimilates his avatar. But there's something important to notice. The Smith avatar fighting Neo at the end? It's the Oracle. At least if each Smith copy retains the memories of the avatar they've assimilated. Of course, it's possible that they share all memories collectively, allowing any individual Smith to act based on the total knowledge of the hive. But the films don't go into this level of detail in their exposition. However, we do get a clear clue in Smith's final words. Before we analyze Smith's realization, we need to revisit something the Oracle explained to Neo. Neither humans nor machines can see beyond a choice they don't understand. For the machines, this means that if they can't comprehend the reasoning behind a decision, they cannot predict what happens next. If their analysis fails to account for a key step, they lose the ability to calculate the future beyond that point. And that is exactly what happens to Smith in his final battle against Neo. This is where the Oracle excels beyond anyone else. She understands human choices so well that she can predict the cascading effects of every decision, even in the most complex scenarios.
The all-knowing Oracle is never surprised. So can she be? She knows everything.
Smith doesn't understand why the Oracle let herself be assimilated.
But if that's true, then why is she here? If she knew I was coming, why wouldn't she leave?
If she is so good at predicting everything, why would she give up so easily? He cannot comprehend her decision, which means he cannot see what comes after it.
We can never see past the choices we don't understand.
As with much else in the trilogy, the films don't spell this out directly. Instead, they bury it in cryptic dialogue, giving us a mystery to unravel, much like a great thriller. Smith believes he will win, not because he is arrogant, but because he has seen it. This isn't some gut feeling or blind confidence. At no point in the films have we seen Smith demonstrate any ability to predict future events. So where does this newfound certainty come from? The answer is simple. He absorbed it from the Oracle when he assimilated her. That's why he reacts so strongly to it. Because he isn't just guessing, he genuinely believes he has seen the future. He is convinced that he will assimilate the last human, that he will take control of all remaining avatars, and that he will rule the Matrix as an all-powerful entity.
All too easy.
During his battle with Neo, Smith remains absolutely certain that the outcome is already decided. And yet, there's something he can't understand. Why does Neo keep fighting? Why is he continuing to resist, despite the inevitable? Even with all the Oracle's knowledge now inside him, Smith still cannot see past Neo's decision.
Why, Mr. Anderson? Why? Why keep fighting?
Smith is still convinced that Neo's choice to fight him will ultimately lead to Smith's victory. But because he doesn't understand the full plan, he doesn't realize that he is acting according to the Oracle's design. When he finally defeats Neo, Smith suddenly hesitates. His mind, now filled with the Oracle's knowledge, feeds him a vision of what comes next.
Wait, I've seen this. I'm supposed to say something.
And then, something strange happens. For the first time ever, Smith calls Neo by his real name.
Everything that has a beginning has an end, Neo.
He doesn't say Mr. Anderson, as he has throughout the entire trilogy. He calls him Neo, just like the Oracle always has. Suddenly, Smith realizes something is wrong. His entire demeanor shifts. All the arrogance and confidence that defined his character completely vanishes.
What? What did I just say? Get away from me!
For the first time, Smith is afraid. In his desperation, Smith does the only thing he can think of. He assimilates Neo, because that is the only logical action left in his mind. But because he doesn't understand the Oracle's plan, he doesn't see that he is triggering his own destruction. Smith doesn't know the full details of Path of the One, and by assimilating Neo, he unwittingly activates the reset mechanism, destroying himself in the process. At this moment, Deus Ex Machina sees that Neo has fulfilled his promise.
It is done.
Smith has lost control of the Matrix, and the machines can now continue their existence, sustaining themselves on the energy of humanity. For them, the cycle is broken, but the system survives. One of the biggest criticisms directed at the sequels, especially Revolutions, is the large-scale battle sequences in the War for Zion. But what is this criticism actually about? It's not like this is the first time a trilogy has ended with a massive battle in the final film. If we compare the length of the Zion battle to other major cinematic battles, we get an interesting perspective. Of course, battle sequences are often interwoven with other scenes. But if we focus solely on the amount dedicated to large-scale war sequences, here's what we get. The Battle of Minas Tirith in The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, lasts 57 minutes. The Battle of Endor in Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, 36 minutes. The Battle of Zion in The Matrix Revolutions, 38 minutes. So maybe it's not so bad after all? Some people have criticized the use of conventional bullets in the Zion battle, especially considering that we've seen more advanced electrical weapons in other scenes. However, these electrical weapons are highly inaccurate, especially over long distances. So using physical ammunition actually makes sense. Unless, of course, you would prefer unrealistically slow laser weapons where the speed of light is artificially reduced for visual effect. More likely, this criticism stems from the fact that a larger portion of Revolutions takes place in the real world rather than inside the Matrix, which was the primary focus of the first film. Many sequels that follow the exact same formula as their predecessor end up feeling like a disappointment. However, sequels that shift focus and build upon the foundation of the first film often create an even stronger experience. because they expand the story rather than just trying to replicate it. We've seen this work several times in film history. The reason so many people dislike the Matrix sequels likely has less to do with the war scenes and more to do with the fact that the full picture is difficult to grasp. If you don't fully understand the Oracle's plan and path of the One, it's harder to appreciate why the Zion battle and the Neo versus Smith fight are both such massive, cataclysmic events. You have to let it all go. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind. On the surface, it might feel like a convenient storytelling choice that the machines just happen to start drilling towards Zion right when it fits the plot of the films. But once you understand why this battle is happening, it suddenly makes a lot more sense. The machines aren't just launching an attack for no reason. This is a precise, calculated operation to eliminate all humans in the real world before the Matrix is reset. At first glance, it might seem strange that the moment Smith assimilates Neo, everything suddenly shifts. Smith is destroyed, and the machines immediately agree to peace. But if you're still unsure about just how much control the Oracle has over this entire process, just listen to her final conversation with the architect.
You played a very dangerous game.
Change always is.
I think the Matrix trilogy is brilliantly constructed. The entire story is built like a mystery waiting to be unraveled. And on top of that, it's designed to be interpreted in many different ways. But personally, I think that once you go through all the details, it becomes very clear how everything fits together. Let's move into the craft of storytelling and break down how these films are structured narratively. As I often say on this channel, story structure is a matter of interpretation. Not everyone will analyze a story the same way, and not every interpretation will necessarily align with the exact intentions of the original writer. However, by breaking down the most important story beats across all three films, we can gain a deeper understanding of how these stories evolve and progress. This is valuable because, as writers, we often find ourselves questioning whether a part of our own story drags on for too long or moves too far in one direction without enough variation. By analyzing how changes in pacing, tension, and structure affect the audience's experience, we can find ways to enhance our own storytelling, whether that means making major changes to a story's content or simply adjusting the order and presentation of key events. As I talk about in this video, which is also linked in the description, certain structural elements are commonly used when analyzing stories. The most important ones include plot points, major events that change the direction of the story; pinch points, reminders of the danger and stakes the protagonist or their group faces without necessarily altering the course of the story in the way plot points do; and midpoint, a special plot point, the turning point dividing the first and second halves of the film. In some stories, this is the biggest shift in the entire narrative. Now let's break down the structure of the first film. The first story beat is the hook, the moment designed to pull the audience into the story immediately. In The Matrix, this is Trinity's chase scene, where she is pursued by Smith and the other agents. A classic, unforgettable sequence. The first plot point is the event that pushes the protagonist out of their ordinary world and into the core of the story's conflict. In The Matrix, this inciting event occurs when Neo is contacted by Morpheus and Trinity. This moment escalates at the 11% mark of the film, when Neo attempts to escape from the agents, but ultimately fails. After spending more time understanding Neo's current reality, the story takes a major shift at 22% into the film. Morpheus presents Neo with a choice: take the blue pill and remain in the Matrix, or take the red pill and discover the truth. Naturally, Neo chooses to embark on his adventure, leaving behind his old world and stepping into the unknown. After introductions and some training sequences, we reach 45% into the film, where the Nebuchadnezzar is nearly captured by the Sentinels. This serves as a pinch point, a reminder of the real-world dangers our heroes face. Just over halfway into the film, Neo has his first meeting with the Oracle. She tells him that he is not the One, contradicting what Morpheus has built him up to believe. However, we now know that this was simply her way of guiding him onto the right path. Immediately after Neo's conversation with the Oracle, the crew is ambushed by agents. At around the 70% mark, Cypher reveals his betrayal, killing Switch and APOC. This reinforces the danger of their mission and raises the stakes for the final act. The transition from Act 2 into Act 3 occurs when Neo chooses to take control of his fate. Based on what the Oracle told him, he decides to re-enter the Matrix to rescue Morpheus. This sets up the film's final act, which revolves entirely around this mission. After successfully freeing Morpheus, we reach the film's climactic action sequence. Neo faces off against Smith in the subway station. This leads into the hallway scene, mirroring the setting where we first saw Trinity at the beginning of the film. And finally, we reach the climactic moment. Neo is shot and seemingly killed, only to rise again as the One, which we now understand why he is capable of doing. The resolution is the brief closing moment that hints at what comes next for the protagonist. Now fully embracing his role as the One, Neo flies away, symbolizing the unlimited power he has awakened. Like the first film, Reloaded opens with a hook involving Trinity. However, this time she isn't fleeing, she's attacking. But then we realize that this is part of Neo's dream. This film focuses on Neo's role and how it connects to the war in the real world. The inciting event occurs when Neo learns that the machines are drilling towards Zion, setting the clock in motion for humanity's survival. At around 25% into the film, the transition from Act 1 to Act 2 happens when Smith takes over Bane's body, bringing his consciousness into the real world. For the first time, Smith has a physical presence outside the Matrix. At around the 40% mark, we are reminded of the danger Smith poses when he appears before Neo after his conversation with the Oracle. Smith attempts to assimilate Neo, but Neo manages to escape.
He's doing his Superman thing.
At the midpoint of the film, Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity successfully steal the Keymaker from the Merovingian. The Keymaker is the essential tool they need to help Neo reach the Door of Light. Just before the 70% mark, the agents launch a full-scale assault to kill the Keymaker. This results in the famous high-speed freeway chase, one of the most spectacular action sequences in the trilogy. The transition into Act 3 occurs when the Keymaker explains the final steps required to reach the source. The team then initiates the operation, setting the stage for the climax. Unlike many other films where the final act builds toward a massive battle, Reloaded does something different. The confrontation isn't a physical fight. It happens through dialogue when Neo meets the architect. Perhaps this is one of the reasons why some people don't like the sequels. However, Act 3 is still packed with obstacles and high-stakes action, both before and after this scene, so I personally think this makes for an incredible climax. Instead of just one big climactic moment, the film delivers two major peaks. Neo defies all odds and saves Trinity from falling to her death, going beyond even Superman's abilities, and removes the bullet from Trinity's body, reviving her after she was shot. Then, in the real world, Neo achieves something even more shocking. He stops a group of Sentinels with his mind, just as they are about to kill them. Once again, the film doesn't end with a long resolution. Instead, we get a direct transition into Revolutions, as we see Neo and Bane both in a coma and the crew discussing what has happened. A perfect setup for the concluding chapter. Since Reloaded and Revolutions are essentially two halves of the same story, there is no separate hook scene at the beginning of Revolutions. The film simply picks up exactly where Reloaded left off. There isn't a major reveal that serves as an inciting event in the traditional sense. However, if we were to identify one, it would likely be when Neo discovers that he is trapped in Mobile Avenue. This is a big reveal for a portion of the film, but it's not necessarily a moment that redefines the entire story. The transition from Act 1 to Act 2 happens when the Oracle tells Neo that he must stop Smith if there is to be any chance of peace. This sets the story in motion, as Neo's final path is now clear. Shortly after this, we are reminded of just how dangerous Smith has become. He assimilates the Oracle. Of course, as we now know, this is all part of her plan. She isn't surprised by this event at all. Alternatively, another possible pinch point is when Bane reveals that he triggered the EMP, knocking out several ships. However, since he kills the person who witnessed this, the other characters never learn about it, so it doesn't have the same widespread narrative impact. At the midpoint of the film, the machines reach the dock, and the battle for Zion begins. We know what's at stake, and if we fully understand the deeper layers of the story, we see that the stakes are even higher than they seem. There are many reminders of the overwhelming threat in the second half of Act 2, but one clear pinch point is when the massive drilling machine breaks through the dock's defenses, allowing the machines to push deeper into Zion. Alternatively, the sheer scale of the battle itself also serves as a continuous reminder of the danger they face. The transition into Act 3 occurs when Neo and Trinity separate from the others, heading to the Machine City to reach the Source. Meanwhile, the Zion battle continues, leading toward the film's final confrontation. As Revolutions builds toward its conclusion, we reach the final battle, Neo versus Smith. The film delivers its climactic moment when Smith finally assimilates Neo. But as we now know, this is the Oracle's planned plot twist, leading directly to Smith's destruction. The pacing of the second half of Revolutions bears a strong resemblance to the structure of Return of the King. At the midpoint, both films shift into their final war sequences. At around the 75% mark, the battle reaches its conclusion, transitioning into the final personal mission, Frodo's last journey to Mount Doom and Neo's journey to the Machine City. Both stories end with a climactic one-on-one battle. Neo versus Smith mirrors Frodo's struggle at the edge of Mount Doom. The film closes with a short but impactful resolution. The humans celebrate peace, and the final conversation between the Oracle and the Architect serves as a perfect ending to the trilogy's complex story. Now that we've examined the story structure, it's time to break down the trilogy's three most important conversations, where exposition dumps and complex subtext are blended into sequences that border on mystery storytelling. Let's analyze how these scenes are presented on screen. I won't be analyzing Neo's first conversation with the Oracle in the Matrix, as it is relatively straightforward. The meaning of what she says is clear. The only part that isn't immediately obvious is why she chooses to say the things she does. But as we now know, that all ties back to Path of the One, and her mission to guide events toward her ultimate plan. The first conversation we'll analyze is when Neo meets the Oracle again in the first half of Reloaded.
Well, come on. I ain't gonna bite you. Come around here and let me have a look at you. My goodness, look at you. You turned out all right, didn't you? How do you feel? I know you're not sleepy. We'll get to that. Why don't you come and have a sit this time?
One of the first things to notice is how differently the Oracle speaks compared to the Architect. Her way of communicating is far more human. She radiates warmth, she builds trust, and she speaks in a casual, empathetic way. She comes across as someone who genuinely cares. This is, of course, intentional. Her ability to connect with people emotionally is one of her most powerful tools, allowing her to influence their choices without them even realizing it.
Maybe I'll stand.
Well, suit yourself.
I felt like sitting.
I know. So, let's get the obvious stuff out of the way.
You're not human, are you?
Well, it's tough to get any more obvious than that.
If I had to guess, I'd say you're a program from the machine world. So is he.
So far, so good.
The Oracle's warm and human-like demeanor makes it easy for people to trust her, perhaps even to believe she is human. Maybe Neo thought this at first, but both he and the audience receive absolute confirmation here. She is not human at all.
But if that's true, that could mean you are part of this system, another kind of control.
Keep going.
I suppose the most obvious question is, how can I trust you?
Bingo. It is a pickle, no doubt about it. Bad news is there's no way if you can really know whether I'm here to help you or not. So it's really up to you. Just have to make up your own damn mind to either accept what I'm going to tell you or reject it. Candy?
She doesn't try to deceive Neo, at least not directly. She openly admits that he has no way of knowing whether she is truly there to help him. This is what makes the Oracle so unique. She presents everything as a choice, but by doing so, she steers people in the direction she wants them to go. Neo, of course, still doesn't realize that everything she has told him and the rest of humanity is built on carefully crafted lies designed to push them toward her ultimate goal. She knows Neo isn't yet ready to see beyond his own choices. Just like she told him in the first film, he still doesn't know himself well enough to truly understand the forces guiding him. But unlike the Architect, her goal isn't to eliminate humans or keep them enslaved. Her true objective is peace, a future where humans and machines no longer need to destroy each other.
You already know if I'm going to take it?
Wouldn't be much of an oracle if I didn't.
But if you already know, how can I make a choice?
Because you didn't come here to make the choice. You've already made it. You're here to try to understand why you made it. I thought you'd have figured that out by now.
Obviously, they aren't talking about whether or not Neo will take the candy. Neo is trying to understand the nature of free will, what it actually means if his choices are already known. This moment isn't just about whether he should follow the Oracle's guidance, it's about whether his choices are truly his own at all. But the Oracle's response isn't concerned with whether he has free will. She tells him that the choice has already been made. His task isn't to decide what to do, it's to understand why he is doing it.
Why are you here?
Same reason. I love candy.
But why help us?
We're all here to do what we're all here to do. I'm interested in one thing, Neo, the future. And believe me, I know the only way to get there is together.
At first glance, her answer might seem overly vague, but once you understand her position, it's completely obvious. She has spent years analyzing human behavior so that she can predict future outcomes, not just for individuals, but for humanity as a whole. She has realized that machines and humans depend on each other, and the only path to peace is for them to recognize this mutual dependence. This entire plan, the sixth iteration of Path of the One, is built around steering both sides toward this realization. Her response is simply a surface-level way of stating this, without revealing all the details.
Are there other programs like you?
Oh, well, not like me, but look, see those birds? At some point, a program was written to govern them. A program was written to watch over the trees and the wind, sunrise and sunset. There are programs running all over the place. The ones doing their job, doing what they were meant to do, are invisible. You'd never even know they were here. But the other ones, well, you hear about them all the time.
I've never heard of them.
Of course you have. Every time you've heard someone say they saw a ghost or an angel. Every story you've ever heard about vampires, werewolves, or aliens is the system assimilating some program that's doing something they're not supposed to be doing.
Even though Neo's question was about whether there are other programs like her, the Oracle quickly shifts the conversation to something else. But what she says is still highly relevant. She explains that many other programs exist that serve different functions beyond just maintaining the virtual world. There are other entities with their own agendas, their own control mechanisms, and abilities beyond those of normal humans or standard programs. This insight helps us understand two major things. It provides context for other characters we meet later, like the Merovingian and his exiles, and it reinforces a core rule of the Matrix's design. Every program has a purpose. Once that purpose is fulfilled, the program is meant to be deleted. This concept is crucial to understanding why certain programs, like the Oracle and Smith, are able to challenge the system itself.
Programs hacking programs. Why?
There are reasons, but usually a program chooses exile when it faces deletion.
And why would a program be deleted?
Maybe it breaks down. Maybe a better program is created to replace it. Happens all the time. And when it does, a program can either choose to hide here or return to the source.
The machine mainframe.
Yes, where you must go, where the path of the one ends. You've seen it in your dreams, haven't you? The door made of light.
Once again, the Oracle redirects the conversation. At first, she is talking about rogue programs and why some choose exile rather than deletion. But then, she subtly guides the topic back to Neo's journey, toward the source. This is one of her most effective techniques, introducing a side topic that feels relevant, but ultimately serves to nudge Neo where she needs him to go. Neo completely trusts her judgment, so he doesn't question why he needs to find this door. The Oracle still needs him to follow Path of the One to reach the Architect, but also to be manipulated into making a different choice than all his predecessors. She doesn't tell him what to do outright. She simply creates the conditions where he will convince himself it is the right path. When she asks about the door made of light, it's clear that she already knows about his dreams. How? There are two possible explanations. Machines monitor thoughts, emotions, and mental activity of all humans connected to the Matrix. It's entirely possible that the Oracle has access to this data. Or she implanted the dreams herself. Given her understanding of psychology and subconscious influence, it wouldn't be surprising if she made sure Neo had these dreams to reinforce his sense of destiny. Either way, whether she engineered the dreams or simply exploited them, this is yet another example of how she masterfully leads Neo without ever forcing his decisions directly.
What happens when you go through the door?
I see Trinity, and something happens. Something bad. She starts to fall, and then I wake up.
Do you see her die?
No.
You have the sight now, Neo. You are looking at the world without time.
Then why can't I see what happens to her?
We can never see past the choices we don't understand.
For once, the Oracle is actually asking a question she doesn't already know the answer to. She is often perceived as an omniscient figure, but in reality she is still an artificial intelligence that operates only on the data available to her. She doesn't have absolute knowledge of the future. Instead, she performs highly advanced probability analyses, allowing her to predict outcomes better than any human ever could. But she still doesn't know with certainty what Neo will do when he reaches the architect's chamber. So she asks him, both to gather more insight and to subtly continue guiding him in the direction she wants.
Are you saying I have to choose whether Trinity lives or dies?
No, we've already made the choice. Now you have to understand it.
No, I can't do that. I won't.
Well, you have to.
Why?
Because you're the one.
This is where the Oracle's revised plan for this iteration of the One comes into play. She guides Neo toward making a choice that is no longer about humanity's survival, but about Trinity. Her conversations with previous versions of the One likely looked very different. She has set up the conditions so that Neo's love for Trinity overrides all other concerns, and she knows exactly what humans are capable of when they are driven by emotion. In a way, she is doing the same thing as before, leading the One to make a choice in the architect's chamber that is actually not a choice at all. Neo has already made the decision, not in the sense that he is aware of it yet, but in the sense that when the moment comes, he will already know what he is going to do, but he is struggling with the weight of that choice. He doesn't know how to process it yet. Have you ever felt stuck between two options? Maybe it's something small, choosing which movie to watch, or deciding between two events happening at the same time. You just can't choose. And then someone says, go with that one. And in that instant, you realize, no, it's actually the other one I want. Or you feel a sense of relief, because deep down you already knew the answer. This is exactly what's happening to Neo. He has already chosen Trinity. His mind just hasn't caught up yet, and the Oracle is simply pushing him toward the realization of the decision he has already made.
What if I can't? What happens if I fail?
Then Zion will fall. Our time is up. Listen to me, Neo. You can save Zion if you reach the source, but to do that you will need the Keymaker.
The Oracle has orchestrated everything to lead Neo toward the decision she wants him to make. She doesn't know with 100% certainty that he will follow through, but she has set the conditions so that it is the most likely outcome. If he doesn't make this choice, he won't be able to stop Smith. The Matrix will be reset as before, and Zion will be destroyed, just like in every previous iteration. This reinforces the pressure on Neo, making him feel as though he is humanity's last hope. But in reality, she has positioned him in such a way that his personal motivations, saving Trinity, align perfectly with what she needs him to do.
The Keymaker.
Yes, he disappeared some time ago. We did not know what happened to him until now. He's being held prisoner by a very dangerous program. One of the oldest of us. He is called the Merovingian, and he will not let him go willingly.
It's unclear whether the Keymaker's disappearance was part of the Oracle's plan from the beginning, or if this is an unexpected complication due to the Merovingian's separate agenda. Either way, this only serves to intensify the challenge that Neo must overcome. If his journey through Path of the One was too easy, it wouldn't have the same weight. Whether the Merovingians' interference was intentional or not, it ultimately reinforces Neo's drive, further fueling his determination to save Trinity.
What does he want?
What do all men with power want? More power. Be there at that exact time, and you will have a chance.
We must go.
Seems like every time we meet, I got nothing but bad news. I'm sorry about that, I surely am. But for what it's worth, you've made a believer out of me. Good luck, kiddo.
The Oracle has already calculated when the best opportunity to free the Keymaker will occur. She has analyzed the circumstances, probabilities, and behaviors of all the key players involved, allowing her to determine the most opportune moment for Neo to act. By giving him this information, she maximizes his chances of succeeding in reaching the source and fulfilling Path of the One. But this isn't just for humanity's sake. Her plan is designed to benefit both humans and machines, ensuring a future where they can coexist instead of destroy each other. When Neo reaches the door of light and enters the architect's chamber, we arrive at what is possibly the most confusing conversation in the sequels. Many of the details from Neo's earlier conversation with the Oracle, as well as other key pieces of information scattered throughout the films, all lead up to this moment. But the way the architect presents it is so cryptic, so fast-paced and dense, that it takes multiple viewings to fully grasp all the implications. Let's break down the conversation step by step.
Hello, Neo.
Who are you?
I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
The process the architect refers to is Path of the One. This path was specifically designed by the Oracle to alter the consciousness of the One so that they would ultimately make the choice the machines want them to make. Neo is still human, so despite this psychological conditioning, he still questions the decision placed before him. From a machine's logical perspective, his first question, "Why am I here?" is irrelevant. However, the architect has been through this many times before, so he expects it, knowing that this is always the first thing a human will ask. This is a clear contrast between how machines process information and how humans approach understanding their reality.
Why am I here?
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here.
This is a highly technical explanation delivered in cold, machine-like logic, precisely the opposite of how the Oracle communicates. What the architect refers to as the anomaly is the fact that not 100% of humans accept the Matrix as reality. This is the core flaw in his system, one that has existed since the very first version of the Matrix, which Smith described in the first film. The architect has spent every iteration attempting to correct this error, but no matter how much he refines the simulation, there are always humans who reject it. This is why Path of the One exists. It is not a solution to the problem, but it is the best way the machines have found to keep it under control. The architect sees Path of the One as a burden, but a manageable one. This system ensures that dissenters are funneled into Zion, gathering them into one place where they can later be eliminated. The One is led to this very room where he will choose to reset the Matrix. And the Matrix is wiped and restarted, ensuring that all humans once again believe in their reality. This cycle prevents total system collapse while still allowing the machines to harvest human energy. In his response, the architect explains how Neo has been brought here, but he still hasn't told him the purpose of his presence, what he is actually expected to do now that he has arrived.
You haven't answered my question.
Quite right. Interesting. That was quicker than the others.
Others? How many others? What? Answer one question.
The Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
5 months.
This is the first time the audience learns that the Matrix is not in its first iteration, or the second if you take the words of Smith from the first movie, but is actually part of a repeating process. Morpheus always spoke of the prophecy and the story of the One as though it was a unique event. We were led to believe that the first person to free minds from the Matrix was the first of their kind, a singular hero in history. But now we learn that this has all been carefully orchestrated. Every iteration of the Matrix has produced a new one, each following the same pre-planned path. Neo is not the first savior. He is simply the latest in a long line of engineered anomalies.
Too possible. They were 5 months before. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Both Neo and the architect make crucial observations here. The machines depend on Path of the One to maintain control over both the Matrix and Zion, but even within their own system, knowledge is compartmentalized. It's likely that only the Oracle and the architect fully understand the entire process and its implications. The architect describes the nature of the anomaly, not just as a single flaw in the system, but as something that affects the system at every level. The Matrix is designed to simulate an entire world where every tiny calculation is meant to be precisely controlled. Visual details, sensory experiences, emotions fed into human minds, and physical laws governing the world. When someone rejects this reality, they aren't just challenging their own perception, they are disrupting the stability of the entire simulation. Every human connected to the Matrix is meant to perceive the same consistent reality. If someone acts outside the established rules, they create fluctuations, which can escalate into chain reactions that destabilize the entire system. This is what the architect means by systemic anomaly. It's not just that the One exists as an individual. It's that his very presence introduces unpredictability into a system that is designed to be mathematically perfect.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to bits! Kill you! You can't make me do anything, like prick!
Choice. The problem is choice.
The screens showing past iterations of the One reveal something critical. None of them fully understood the circumstances they were in. They reacted emotionally, failing to see the larger system at play. And because they didn't grasp the full picture, they did exactly what Path of the One was designed to make them do. They followed the plan, believing they were making a real choice, when in reality, they had already been conditioned to take the only option presented to them. As the Oracle said earlier, you didn't come here to make the choice, you've already made it. Neo, however, is different. Instead of lashing out or rejecting the system impulsively, he recognizes the deeper issue. Choice itself is the problem. He understands that the machines have engineered free will in a way that makes it controllable, right up until this exact moment. For every previous one, this moment wasn't really a choice. It was simply a final step in a long process of manipulation. But Neo sees beyond this conditioning.
The first Matrix I designed was quite naturally perfect. It was a work of art, flawless, sublime, a triumph equaled only by its monumental failure. The inevitability of its doom is apparent to me now as a consequence of the imperfection inherent in every human being, as I redesigned it, based on your history, to more accurately reflect the varying grotesqueries of your nature. However, I was again frustrated by failure. I have since come to understand that the answer eluded me because it required a lesser mind, or perhaps a mind less bound by the parameters of perfection. Thus, the answer was stumbled upon by another, an intuitive program, initially created to investigate certain aspects of the human psyche. If I am the father of the Matrix, she would undoubtedly be its mother.
Here, the architect provides a brief history of the Matrix, while also offering a rare moment of self-criticism. His first design was mathematically perfect, a world free from flaws, suffering, or disorder. By his logic, this should have worked, yet it failed spectacularly. He now understands that this failure was due to what he sees as a fundamental flaw in human nature. Humans do not accept perfection. This is something machines struggle to comprehend. From a purely logical perspective, a perfect world should be accepted as ideal. But humans are not purely logical beings. Their sense of self, agency, and experience is deeply tied to conflict, struggle, and imperfection. So, he redesigned the Matrix to reflect the darker, more chaotic aspects of human history. Yet even this failed. The architect now admits that the solution eluded him because he is too bound by his own parameters, by his relentless pursuit of logic and perfection. The answer, he says, was stumbled upon by another, an intuitive program designed to study human psychology. The Oracle. While the architect sees himself as the mastermind, he is actually not the one in control. The Oracle, who understands the nature of choice, emotion, and unpredictability, is the one pulling the strings behind everything. This conversation also touches on one of the trilogy's central philosophical debates. Can machines truly understand human emotions? Smith talks about it. Ramachandra talks about it. Persephone manipulates it. The architect, however, sees it as a flaw. To him, emotions are an obstacle, a factor that prevents him from applying pure logic to the near-infinite calculations that make up the Matrix. But his inability to embrace this complexity is exactly what puts him beneath the Oracle in terms of control. While he sees himself as the true creator, it is her understanding of human psychology that has actually shaped the Matrix into what it is today.
The Oracle.
Please, As I was saying, she stumbled upon a solution whereby nearly 99% of all test subjects accepted the program as long as they were given a choice, even if they were only aware of the choice at a near unconscious level. While this answer functioned, it was obviously fundamentally flawed, thus creating the otherwise contradictory systemic anomaly that, if left unchecked, might threaten the system itself. Ergo, those that refused the program, while a minority, if unchecked, would constitute an escalating probability of disaster.
The way the architect reacts when Neo mentions the Oracle is telling. He sees human emotion and impulse as a fundamental weakness because it makes people less predictable and harder to control. This is why he finds it absurd that humans would give an AI a title like the Oracle, a name that suggests mysticism rather than logic. To him, this entire process should have been solved through pure control, pure precision. Despite his disdain for her methods, the architect acknowledges that the Oracle's solution worked. By giving humans the illusion of choice, 99% of them accepted the Matrix as their reality. However, the architect sees this as a flawed compromise. Even though the Oracle's method achieved near total control, it did not eliminate the systemic anomaly. The remaining 1%, those who refused the illusion, still posed a growing threat. If left unchecked, they could spread their doubts and cause an escalating system failure. This is why the architect must rely on the Oracle system for managing dissent, Path of the One. Had he achieved his original goal, 100% acceptance, none of this would be necessary. But he failed, because, as Neo has already realized, the problem is choice.
This is about Zion.
You are here because Zion is about to be destroyed. Its every living inhabitant terminated, its entire existence eradicated.
At this point, Neo has realized that Path of the One is tied to Zion, but he hasn't fully grasped the extent of the process. He knows that this system is about control, but he may not have fully accepted that it involves the total annihilation of every human in the real world. This moment makes it undeniably clear. Zion's destruction is not just a possibility, it is a certainty within the existing cycle. Even though Neo has a better understanding of the process than any of the previous ones, he is still not fully able to comprehend the weight of the choice before him. This is exactly why the Oracle told him, "You're not here to make the choice, you've already made it. You're here to understand why you made it."
Bullshit.
Denial is the most predictable of all human responses. But rest assured, this will be the 6th time we have destroyed it, and we have become exceedingly efficient at it. The function of the One is now to return to the source, allowing a temporary dissemination of the code you carry, reinserting the prime program. After which you will be required to select from the Matrix 23 individuals, 16 female, 7 male, to rebuild Zion. Failure to comply with this process will result in a cataclysmic system crash, killing everyone connected to the Matrix, which, coupled with the extermination of Zion, will ultimately result in the extinction of the entire human race.
The architect isn't surprised by Neo's reaction. It is completely predictable that a human being would struggle to accept this reality. That's exactly why every previous iteration of the One has ultimately submitted to the process, because the sheer weight of this decision makes the choice seem unavoidable. This is a moment of psychological pressure, designed to steer Neo toward returning to the source and completing Path of the One. The architect lays out the only two possible outcomes. Neo complies and resets the Matrix. He reintegrates the Prime program into the system, selects 23 humans from within the Matrix to repopulate Zion and restart the cycle. The machines maintain control, and the system remains functional for another century until the next reset is needed. Or Neo refuses, leading to a complete collapse of the Matrix. The system crash irreversibly, and every human connected to the Matrix die. Combined with the destruction of Zion, this would result in total human extinction. From the machine's perspective, there is only one rational choice. By giving Neo this information, they are pressuring him into making the choice they expect. The process of selecting 23 individuals ensures that the machines maintain full control over how Zion develops in the next cycle. Instead of waiting for humans to naturally break free from the Matrix over time, they preemptively release a controlled group, guiding them toward rebuilding civilization exactly as planned. This allows them to repeat the cycle once the anomaly reaches systemic levels again, which, as we know, has taken approximately 100 years in this iteration. Neo now has the full picture, and, in the machine's eyes, should be ready to make the only logical choice: But unlike his predecessors, he has more information, more emotional weight, and a different motivation driving his decision.
You won't let it happen. You can't. You need human beings to survive.
There are levels of survival we are prepared to accept. However, the relevant issue is whether or not you are ready to accept the responsibility for the death of every human being in this world. It is interesting reading your reactions. Your 5 predecessors were, by design, based on a similar predication, a contingent affirmation that was meant to create a profound attachment to the rest of your species, facilitating the function of the One. While the others experienced this in a very general way, your experience is far more specific, vis-a-vis love.
This is a critical moment in the conversation. Up until now, the architect has spoken as though everything is proceeding as it always has. But here he finally acknowledges that Neo is different. Unlike the previous 5 iterations of the One, who were designed to have a generalized connection to humanity, Neo's emotional connection is highly specific: love for Trinity. This directly confirms what the Oracle has done.
Trinity.
Apropos, she entered the Matrix to save your life at the cost of her own.
No.
Which brings us at last to the moment of truth, wherein the fundamental flaw is ultimately expressed and the anomaly revealed as both beginning and end. There are 2 doors. The door to your right leads to the source and the salvation of Zion. The door to your left leads back to the Matrix, to her, and to the end of your species. As you adequately put, the problem is choice. But we already know what you are going to do, don't we? Already I can see the chain reaction, the chemical precursors that signal the onset of an emotion, designed specifically to overwhelm logic and reason. An emotion that is already blinding you from the simple and obvious truth. She is going to die, and there is nothing you can do to stop it.
At this moment, the architect's preference is clear. He would still rather follow the original plan. Reset the Matrix, wipe out Zion and repopulate it, and erase all instability and anomalies. This is the same system that has worked 5 times before, and he sees no reason to deviate from it. But now, for the first time, he is dealing with a version of the One who is no longer playing by the script. Even though the architect already knows what Neo is going to do, he makes one final attempt to convince him otherwise. He tries to break Neo's emotional drive, reminding him of a cold, logical truth. Trinity is already doomed. No matter which choice he makes, the architect wants him to believe that her fate is sealed. This is his last effort to push Neo toward the rational decision instead of the emotional one. The architect seems to already know that Neo will not choose the source. This is the first time Path of the One will not go as planned. At this moment, the architect realizes that the cycle is breaking and the true unknown begins.
Hope. It is the quintessential human delusion, simultaneously the source of your greatest strength and your greatest weakness.
If I were you, I would hope that we don't meet again.
We won't.
This is the architect's final remark, a parting shot that perfectly encapsulates his worldview. To him, hope is nothing more than an illusion, a flawed human construct that both drives them forward and leads to their downfall. It is irrational, impossible to calculate, and the one thing machines cannot fully control. And yet, it is also why Neo is different, why this iteration of the One has broken the system for the first time. After Neo defies the architect's intended choice, his allies spend the entire first act of revolutions trying to free him from the Merovingians' captivity. Once he is freed, his first instinct is that he needs to speak with the Oracle. This leads him to seek her out once again.
That's it. That's the secret. You've got to use your hands.
Why?
Cookies need love like everything does.
This small exchange may seem insignificant at first, but it serves as a subtle foreshadowing of Smith's final battle with Neo. At the climax of Revolutions, after assimilating the Oracle, Smith repeats this same line, a confirmation that he has gained access to her memories. This detail is critical because it proves that when Smith takes over an avatar, he inherits their knowledge and memories. This is a calculated part of the Oracle's plan. She allows herself to be assimilated to ensure that Smith gains enough power to create a true imbalance in the system. She knows that only by making him a threat to both humans and machines can she force a scenario where Neo must face him and the system must be rewritten. Even in this small moment, she is laying the groundwork for the final outcome.
Mel!
I was hoping to have these done before you got here. Oh, well. Sati, honey, I think it's time for a tasting. Take the bowl to see off and find out if they're ready.
Okay. I'm glad you got out.
Me too.
So, Do you recognize me?
A part of you.
Yeah, that's how it works. Some bits you lose, some bits you keep. I don't yet recognize my face in the mirror, but I still left-handy.
No, thank you.
Remember what you were like when you first walked through my door? Jittery as a June bug. And now just look at you. You sure did surprise me, Neo. And you still do.
You gave me a few surprises, too.
I hope I helped.
You helped me to get here, but my question is why? Where is this going? Where does it end?
I don't know.
You don't know or you won't tell me?
At this point, Neo has developed a far deeper understanding of both the machines and the Oracle herself. He now sees how she has led him along this path, but he still has no reason to doubt her intentions. Even though he recognizes her influence, he still trusts her guidance. This is a significant shift from their earlier conversations. Neo is no longer just receiving wisdom from the Oracle, he is now actively questioning her role and her limits. For the first time, Neo directly asks her where this all leads, what the final outcome will be, but instead of a clear answer, the Oracle simply says, "I don't know." Neo immediately questions this. At this point, Neo is no longer blindly accepting her words. He is challenging the limits of her foresight and knowledge. This moment is crucial because it shows that despite all of the Oracle's calculations and manipulations, even she does not know for certain how this story will end. Her ability to predict outcomes is based on her understanding of human choices, but she still cannot see past a decision that hasn't been fully understood yet. This is the same principle she explained to Neo in Reloaded. We can never see past the choices we don't understand. Now she is experiencing that limitation herself.
I told you before, no one can see beyond a choice they don't understand. And I mean no one.
What choice?
It doesn't matter. It's my choice. I have mine to make, same as you have yours.
For the first time, the Oracle explicitly states that she has made a personal choice. She is helping humanity at great personal cost, risking more than ever before by altering Path of the One in this 6th iteration of the Matrix. Her decision has already had consequences. She has been changed and is now operating under greater risk than before. The fact that she has a new physical form reflects the real cost of her decision. We know that the Oracle's actress changed due to real-world circumstances, but in-universe, it makes perfect sense that her choice to help Neo and humanity has resulted in direct repercussions for her. The Oracle could have simply let Path of the One play out as it always had before. Zion would be destroyed. The Matrix would be reset. The cycle would continue, but she chose to disrupt this cycle instead. The real question is why. The most logical explanation is that she has grown throughout each iteration of the Matrix. She has spent centuries interacting with humans, observing them, studying them, guiding them. Through her repeated experiences, she has deepened her understanding of human psychology and emotions. Unlike the architect, who views humans as flawed variables in an otherwise perfect equation, the Oracle has come to see value in their existence. Her ability to understand emotions and human nature has likely led her to genuinely believe that a peaceful coexistence is possible, that humans are more than just batteries to be controlled and reset when necessary.
Does that include what things to tell me and what not to tell me?
Of course not.
Then why didn't you tell me about the architect? Why didn't you tell me about Zion and the ones before me? Why didn't you tell me the truth?
Because it wasn't time for you to know.
Who decided it wasn't time?
You know who.
I did. Then I think it's time for me to know a few more things.
The Oracle confirms something crucial. She didn't withhold information from Neo because she wanted to deceive him, but because he wasn't ready to process it yet. She knew that if she had revealed everything from the start, Neo may not have followed the path she needed him to take. If he had known that the One was part of a cycle, that Zion had been destroyed 5 times before, that the architect had already planned for his arrival, he might never have embraced his role in the first place. Her ability to manipulate events is not just about what she tells people, but when she tells them.
So do I.
Tell me how I separated my mind from my body without jacking in. Tell me how I stopped 4 sentinels by thinking it. Tell me just what the hell is happening to me.
The power of the One extends beyond this world. It reaches from here all the way back to where it came from.
Where?
The source. That's what you felt when you touched those sentinels. But you weren't ready for it. You should be dead. But apparently you weren't ready for that either.
The Oracle reveals that Neo's powers are not limited to the Matrix. They extend all the way back to the source itself. But what does this actually mean in practice? Consider the circumstances surrounding Neo's survival. Everything in the Oracle's plan depends on Neo staying alive. She has taken a massive risk by altering the path of the One, and much of her strategy hinges on Neo's ability to reach the final confrontation. Would she really leave his survival up to chance when there was always a risk that he could be killed in the real world? That wouldn't align with her character or the level of control she maintains over every other variable. The answer is simple. Of course, she ensured that he couldn't be killed in a random machine attack. Neo and every other human born into the Matrix have neural implants that allow machines to interface with their minds. If the Matrix can feed all sensory experiences into humans, there is no reason why Neo's extraordinary abilities through the Prime program couldn't also extend into the real world, either by the machines automatically reacting to his presence, shutting down when they sense the anomaly, or by his thoughts and emotions being picked up by the sensors and connections to his neural network that are used during connection to the Matrix, and those signals causing the robots to collapse as part of the security. This would explain why, instead of being killed by the Sentinels, they collapse the moment he reaches out toward them. To the Oracle, losing a handful of machines is a small price to pay to ensure that Neo reaches the final stage of her plan. The way Neo interacts with machines in the real world isn't the same as when he's inside the Matrix. Why? Because this communication is wireless, not directly linked through a physical jack-in connection. This means that the precision of the signal is lower, and the data flow is limited, making it feel alien and unfamiliar to him. This is why the Oracle tells him, "You weren't ready for it." Unlike the Matrix, where his mind is fully immersed in the system, his connection to the source in the real world is weaker and less refined. This also explains why Neo can still see Bane even after his physical eyes are destroyed. Since Bane's body is controlled by Smith, the machines are still aware of who he really is. If Neo's connection to the source allows him to receive data from the machines, then they could be feeding him a digital representation of what he needs to see. That's why instead of seeing Bane as a human, he sees Smith's fiery outline, because that's how the machines identify him.
The architect told me that if I didn't return to the source, Zion would be destroyed by midnight tonight.
Please. You and I may not be able to see beyond our own choices, but that man can't see past any choice.
Why not?
He doesn't understand them. He can't. To him, they are variables in an equation, when at a time each variable must be solved and counted. That's his purpose, to balance the equation.
What's your purpose?
To unbalance it.
Did you notice how the Oracle reacts with "please" when Neo references the architect? It's the same dismissive reaction the architect had when Neo mentioned the Oracle in Reloaded. It's almost like they are an old couple who have been arguing for centuries. They are opposites in every way, yet they are both essential to the ongoing system of the Matrix. Technically, the architect wasn't wrong when he told Neo that Zion would be destroyed. Path of the One has always involved wiping out Zion and resetting the Matrix. Whether Neo returns to the source or not, the machines are already on their way to destroy Zion. But the Oracle has introduced a different plan this time, one that could actually bring peace. For the first time in the Matrix's history, there is an alternative to repeating the cycle endlessly. The Oracle points out why the architect cannot understand choice. To him, choices are just variables in a mathematical equation. Each variable must be solved and countered, leading to a predetermined solution. His entire existence revolves around balancing equations. Meanwhile, the Oracle exists to disrupt that balance, to introduce unpredictability and free will into a system that was designed to be perfectly controlled. The Oracle is, in a way, a writer shaping the future, but instead of just creating a book or a film, she is rewriting the destiny of both humanity and the machines.
Why? What do you want?
I want the same thing you want, Neo. And I'm willing to go as far as you are to get it.
The end of the war. Is it going to end?
One way or another.
Can Zion be saved?
I'm sorry I don't have the answer to that question, but if there's an answer, there's only one place you're going to find it.
Where?
You know where. And if you can't find the answer, then I'm afraid there may be no tomorrow for any of us.
What does that mean?
Everything that has a beginning has an end. I see the end coming. I see the darkness spreading. I see death. And you are all that stands in his way.
Smith.
At this point, the Oracle is once again steering Neo toward the final step in her plan. But this time, it's different. In previous iterations, she led the One towards saving humanity through the Source. Now she is preparing Neo to take on a completely new responsibility, stopping Smith. Technically, she isn't lying to him. Smith is a real threat, and Neo is the only one who can stop him. But this entire crisis only exists because the Oracle created it in the first place. She gave Smith his new powers, allowed him to take over the Matrix, and engineered the conditions where Neo would have to face him. She is not just predicting the end of the war, she set it in motion herself. She is, after all, his mother.
You would know, Mom.
Oh. By telling Neo, you are all that stands in his way, she is reinforcing the emotional burden that will drive him to act exactly as she needs him to. He is no longer simply a savior for humanity, he is the last line of defense against total destruction. Now, the war isn't just about humans versus machines, it's about restoring balance to a system that she has deliberately thrown into chaos. Her statement, "Everything that has a beginning has an end," foreshadows what Neo will ultimately realize. Smith isn't just a threat, he is a natural consequence of the system breaking down. For the Matrix to survive, Smith must be destroyed, and for Smith to be destroyed, Neo must sacrifice himself.
Very soon, he's going to have the power to destroy this world, but I believe he won't stop there. He can't. He won't stop until there's nothing left at all.
What is he?
He is you. Your opposite, your negative, the result of the equation trying to balance itself out.
So now she's giving herself a new title? Forget the Oracle. She's the equation now. The Oracle frames Smith as Neo's direct opposite, a negative force created by the system itself to counterbalance Neo's existence. He is not just an agent gone rogue, he is a mathematical necessity. Neo is the One, a force of control, purpose, and choice. Smith is his inversion, a force of chaos, destruction, and inevitability. This plays into the idea that the Matrix isn't just a simulation, but a mathematical system trying to balance itself.
And if I can't stop it?
One way or another, Neo, this war is going to end. Tonight, future of both worlds will be in your hands or in his.
The Oracle frames the final battle as a definitive, all-or-nothing scenario. She knows that Smith's power is still growing, and if he is not stopped, he will consume everything, both the Matrix and the real world. Her words are carefully designed to place the entire burden of responsibility onto Neo's shoulders. This is his final test, his final purpose. But here's the twist. She isn't lying, but she also isn't telling him the full truth. She makes it sound like this is a battle of willpower, that either Neo defeats Smith or Smith takes over the Matrix. But in reality, the only way to end the war is for Neo to lose. If Neo had actually defeated Smith in combat, Smith would have just kept coming back. His entire existence is about consumption and replication. Neo could have kept fighting forever, but unless he found another way, Smith would never truly be stopped. She knows this. She just needs Neo to reach that conclusion himself. Phew. Even I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by the complexity, depth, and sheer brilliance of how this story is constructed. What do you think so far? Are you a little more convinced now that the Matrix sequels are far more than they first appear? Do you have any reflections on how to build stories with high complexity and techniques for presenting exposition and key details effectively? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let's discuss. Now that we have a deeper understanding of how the Matrix trilogy is structured, let's go over some of the biggest criticisms people have had about the sequels. With this new perspective, we can reassess whether these criticisms are truly flaws or if they are simply misunderstood elements of a highly intricate narrative. In Reloaded, Neo stops a group of Sentinels in the real world, and for that, the film has received a lot of criticism. But everyone falls the first time. The first film left plenty of unanswered questions, but because it followed a classic hero's journey and was wrapped in philosophical mysticism, audiences were willing to accept the ambiguity. Yet, when the even more cryptic sequels leave questions unanswered, suddenly they are considered bad storytelling? Please, you have to see past your choices. As I explained earlier in this video, Neo's survival is absolutely crucial to the Oracle's plan. There is no scenario where she would allow him to simply die because a random sentinel happened to be nearby. Of course, he has powers in the real world, and I've already explained how. The entire function of the Prime program is built on his connection to the source. His abilities extend beyond the Matrix, allowing him to interact with machines on a deeper level, even when he isn't plugged in. This was never a plot hole. It was simply a concept introduced in a way that required more thought to understand. But now, with everything we've explored, the logic behind it should be clear. In the first film, Trinity saves Neo from death after he is pumped full of bullets, simply by whispering in his ear. It's a classic hero's climax. Love brings him back, and nobody questions it. But when Reloaded lets Neo save Trinity from a single bullet, suddenly the sequels get criticized? Remember, in this sixth iteration of the Matrix, Trinity is a critical piece of the Oracle's strategy. She is the reason Neo chooses the other door in the Architect's chamber. If Trinity had died before that moment, Neo might have followed the same path as the previous ones. Just like how the Oracle couldn't risk losing Neo, she couldn't risk losing Trinity either. When someone dies in the Matrix, their physical body in the real world also dies. Not because of physical damage, but because the Matrix tells their brain that they are dead. All the Oracle has to do is filter the sensory data that Neo and Trinity receive, reducing the impact of pain and trauma so that their bodies do not shut down immediately. This small adjustment allows them to pull off what seems like miraculous resurrections, but in reality, it's just another layer of the Oracle's control over the system. The Oracle changes avatars between Reloaded and Revolutions. If you've ever considered this a flaw or inconsistency, here's something important to know. Gloria Foster, who brilliantly portrayed the Oracle in the first two films, passed away shortly after filming her conversation with Neo in Reloaded. All remaining scenes involving the Oracle had to be filmed with a different actress. This wasn't a creative decision. It was a real-world necessity. Given the complexity of the Oracle's role, it's remarkable that the story still managed to integrate this change seamlessly. The explanation that the Oracle lost her original form due to her choices fits perfectly into the overarching themes of sacrifice, consequence, and change. Rather than ignoring the shift, the story weaves it into the narrative, making it feel like a natural part of her arc. The two sequels featured ambitious digital effects that were so complex to produce that some ended up looking unrealistic. You could argue that since these scenes take place inside the Matrix, everything is already digitally rendered, so maybe even the machines couldn't render everything perfectly. But in reality, this was simply a case of technology not quite catching up to the ambitions of the filmmakers. It's important not to misjudge entire sequences based on just a few weaker CGI moments. Take, for example, Neo's first major fight against multiple Smiths. Yes, there are some moments where the CGI looks cartoonish, but those are only a few seconds within an otherwise well-executed action sequence. If you go back and watch the scene from the beginning, you'll see that most of it relies on excellent practical effects and realistic choreography. The Wachowskis were not playing it safe with these films. They were pushing visual effects technology to its absolute limits in the early 2000s. In some cases, it paid off brilliantly. In others, it resulted in CGI that hasn't aged well. But that's the price of being ambitious in filmmaking. Not everything will stand the test of time. And given the complexity of what they attempted, the sequels still hold up far better than they get credit for. For some, it can be difficult to accept that the Matrix and the real world can intersect in any way other than humans entering the Matrix, especially if you treat the first film as the definitive rulebook for how the entire story should work. After Smith assimilates Bane just as he is about to exit the Matrix, Smith takes full control of his body in the real world. There are two possible explanations for this. One is that the machines control Bane's implants. Just as Neo can communicate with the machines in the real world, the same could apply to Smith. If the machines have full neural access to every human born inside the Matrix, they could be manipulating Bane through his own implants. More likely, this is a case of transferred consciousness. The machines have already demonstrated the ability to wipe human consciousness and overwrite biological memories. This is what happens when the Matrix is reset, to ensure that all humans once again accept it as reality. This is also what Cypher was negotiating for in the first film. He wanted the machines to erase his past self and rewrite his mind as someone else. If this process happened at the exact moment that Bane was disconnecting from the Matrix, then Smith's consciousness could have overwritten Bane's, creating a biological version of Smith that now controls a real human body. This means that Bane is no longer himself. He is now a physical representation of Smith's mind operating in the real world. His body remains human, but his thoughts, memories, and motivations are entirely Smith's consciousness running on biological hardware. This is not fundamentally different from how humans are controlled while inside the Matrix. It's just that this time, the transfer happened in reverse. In the Matrix, the agents were portrayed as unstoppable forces, a threat so overwhelming that humans had no choice but to run the moment they saw one.
You see an agent, you do what we do. Run. You run your ass off.
But in the sequels, this dynamic changes. The agents, except for Smith, get very little screen time. They no longer seem like an overwhelming force, and they don't serve as the primary antagonists anymore. For some, this shift felt like a downgrade, but is it really a flaw? This only feels like a problem if you expect the sequels to be copies of the first film. But the best film series don't just repeat their successes, they evolve in new directions. The Matrix trilogy isn't just 3 separate stories, it's one long, continuous narrative. In the first film, agents were the primary obstacle because Neo and the others were still operating within a limited understanding of what they were up against. But as the story progresses, Neo's challenges become much greater. The agents were just the first major threat. The real battle isn't against them, it's against the system itself.
That system is our enemy.
By Reloaded, Neo has already surpassed them.
Upgrades.
He fights them effortlessly. He can block their attacks with one hand. He flies away from fights because they are beneath him. At this point, keeping agents as the primary antagonists would have been repetitive and underwhelming. Instead, the sequels introduce bigger threats. Smith's evolution into something uncontrollable, the Merovingian and his rogue programs, the Architect and the revelation of the cycle, and the machines themselves and their war on Zion. Would it really have been better if Neo's biggest challenge in Reloaded was just fighting another set of agents? I don't think so. The sequels weren't trying to rehash the same conflicts, they were expanding the scope of the story. By Revolutions, the agents are no longer relevant to the bigger picture. The system has already begun to break down. Smith has grown beyond the system's control. The war has escalated beyond the Matrix itself. The agents were never meant to be the final villains. They were just the first line of defense for a system that was always hiding something much bigger underneath. Some people have actually criticized the sequels for characters wearing sunglasses in dark environments. But wasn't this exactly the same in the first film? And beyond being a product of early 2000s fashion, this is literally explained in the story itself. Morpheus clearly explains why people look the way they do inside the Matrix.
Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
In other words, a person's appearance inside the Matrix isn't dictated by external realism, but by how they see themselves mentally. If someone believes themselves to be strong, confident, and untouchable, they will appear that way inside the Matrix. If sunglasses enhance that image, then of course they would wear them, even indoors, even at night. It's not about practicality, it's about identity and perception. The use of sunglasses is also a symbolic representation of 2 opposing forces. The rebels, Neo, Morpheus, Trinity, and the others, wear curved sunglasses, reflecting fluidity, adaptability, and free will. The agents wear sharp, angular sunglasses, representing rigid control and system enforcement. This wasn't just a random aesthetic choice, it was part of the visual storytelling woven into the entire trilogy. So criticizing the sequels for something that was already well established in the first film is just missing the point entirely. In Revolutions, several scenes visualize how Neo perceives data streams when he receives information from the machine network without being plugged into the Matrix. He sees Bane and his surroundings after being blinded through a golden energy outline. He later sees the machine city in a similar visual style, and in his final moments, the audience sees him in the same glowing effect as he transcends into the source. This effect is not just a stylistic choice, it represents how Neo perceives raw data streams. Since his implants allow him to interface with the machine network, it makes sense that his sensory experience would adapt to provide him with an alternate form of vision. Essentially, his implants convert machine signals into a visible format, allowing him to see in a way that is different from traditional human eyesight.
It's unbelievable, Trent. Light everywhere. I wish you could see what I see.
This is also why he can see Smith instead of just sensing Bane as a normal human, because the machines themselves recognize Bane as Smith, and Neo is picking up on their data signature. If Neo had simply been left completely blind, he would have had to navigate blindly for the rest of the story, which would have been narratively restrictive. Instead, this data vision effect provides a cinematic way to illustrate his continued awareness of the world even without physical sight. Considering The Matrix is all about perception, digital reality, and machine influence, visualizing data as light energy is actually a perfect way to show his new level of perception. Personally, I think it's an excellent creative solution for showing how Neo experiences the world differently, without resorting to exposition-heavy explanations. The character known as the Kid has a relatively passive role in the sequels. While he does get one heroic moment, opening the gate for Niobe's ship so they can fire the EMP at the dock, his presence doesn't significantly impact the story. The events could have played out almost identically without him, making his character feel somewhat unnecessary. If you find the Kid's presence unexplained, there is actually additional backstory for his character outside of the main films. His escape from the Matrix and his fascination with Neo are explored in the Animatrix from 2003, specifically in the short film Kid's Story. This segment reveals that he is unique because he is one of the very few people to free themselves from the Matrix without external intervention. Instead of being unplugged by the rebels, the Kid wakes himself up through sheer belief and determination.
His vitals are good. He's gonna make it. I didn't think self-substantiation was possible.
Apparently it is.
This makes him an interesting philosophical parallel to Neo's own journey.
I told you, kid, you found me, I didn't find you.
But in Reloaded and Revolutions, his role is mostly sidelined. After Smith assimilates the Oracle, he erupts into a wildly exaggerated evil laugh. Some have criticized this moment, arguing that it feels outdated, like a cartoon villain trope, or even unintentionally comedic. But is it really over the top? Let's break it down. Smith hates the Matrix. He hates humans. He hates his own existence inside this world.
I hate this place.
His ultimate goal is not just domination, it's total annihilation of everything. This desire for destruction is something the Oracle planted in him, and at this moment, Smith is closer than ever to achieving absolute control. By taking over the Oracle, Smith gains access to her vast analytical insights. This means he now sees the future as she did. He believes he knows exactly how the battle with Neo will end, and her calculations tell him that victory is inevitable. This is why he keeps repeating his "I've seen this" line during the final fight. He isn't just confident, he is completely convinced that he has already won. So, is it really that surprising that he is overcome with maniacal joy? This isn't just a power-hungry villain laughing. This is someone who believes he has achieved godhood. Muhahaha.
That's how you do an evil laugh.
Let's be honest here. Hugo Weaving delivers one of the best evil laughs ever put on film. The Matrix sequels introduce several characters who don't directly impact the plot, leading some to believe that certain roles could have been cut without consequence. However, let's break this down. Some characters are clear necessities because they actively shape the core narrative. For example, the Merovingian. He isn't just a random addition. He is the gatekeeper to important obstacles, controlling the fate of the Keymaker and standing in the way of our heroes. His presence serves as a major roadblock that Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity must overcome. There is no question that he is a functional part of the main story arc. Other characters, however, don't directly influence the plot, but instead provide philosophical context that deepens our understanding of the world. These include Ramachandra, Sati, and Persephone. These characters serve to expand the discussion on free will versus control. Ramachandra's conversation about love challenges the idea that machines lack emotions. He argues that love is simply a word, and what matters is what drives us to act. This builds on Neo's growing realization that human-like qualities aren't exclusive to humans. They explore the relationship between humans and machines. Persephone tests the concept of desire by forcing Neo into a transactional kiss, suggesting that even within a programmed world, emotions and manipulations aren't so different from those in the real world. Sadi represents the next generation of programs that exist outside of the machine's strict logic, hinting at a new era where machines might evolve beyond their original roles. And they influence Neo's perspective. Neo is shaped by what he learns from these conversations. His understanding of choice, control, and purpose is broadened by interacting with characters who exist outside the rigid structure of the Matrix's main conflict. If the sequels were only about moving the plot forward, then yes, some of these characters could have been removed without drastically altering the story's core events. However, the Matrix films are not just action-driven plots. They are philosophical explorations of free will, determinism, and the nature of reality. These characters enrich the thematic depth of the story, providing insight into the world of the Matrix beyond just Neo's personal journey. While some may see them as distractions, they actually enhance the complexity of the themes that the Matrix has always explored. With the Matrix sequels leaving many people confused, especially about the connections between the Matrix and the real world, various alternative theories have emerged. One of the most popular fan theories suggests that Smith, not Neo, is actually the One. This idea is based on certain interpretations of Morpheus's words in the first film.
When the Matrix was first built, there was a man born inside.
Neo was not born inside the Matrix, he was born in the real world. Smith, however, is a program and could, in a sense, be considered to have been born inside the Matrix. The prophecy also states that this individual died and would return to destroy the Matrix. Smith dies at the end of the Matrix when Neo destroys him. He then returns and attempts to assimilate and control every entity in the Matrix. Because of this, some believe that Smith was actually the One all along. While this theory has some logic behind it, it doesn't hold up against the deeper details of the trilogy. The theory relies on Morpheus's belief in the prophecy.
Is it really so hard to believe?
But we now know that the prophecy was fabricated.
It was a lie, Morpheus. The prophecy was a lie.
This is something Neo realizes in Reloaded when he learns the truth from the architect. The prophecy wasn't real. It was a control mechanism designed to keep the cycle repeating forever. Smith may fit some parts of the prophecy, but the entire prophecy itself was false, so trying to apply it to him misses the point. Morpheus doesn't know that this is the sixth iteration of the Matrix, but he does know that the war between humans and machines has been going on for nearly
100 years!
The prophecy states, after he died, he would return. But the events of the first film happened long after the prophecy was first told. Smith dying at the end of the Matrix doesn't fit into the timeline of the prophecy because it's something that happens long after the cycle has already been in motion. Even if the prophecy were real, Smith never follows Path of the One. Neo does. The Path of the One is a real system described in detail by the architect and the oracle. Neo is guided through a structured journey, leading him to the source. Smith, however, is not part of this structure. He is the anomaly that threatens it. Smith isn't following a pre-designed process to reset the Matrix. He is a virus, a rogue element that even the machines cannot fully control. Neo's journey is clearly mapped out, even if he ultimately chooses to break the cycle. Smith is never part of that system. While the Smith is the One theory makes for an interesting discussion, it doesn't hold up against the actual mechanics of the story. Instead of being the One, Smith is actually the anti-One, the opposite force that balances Neo. Neo is the One, the stabilizing force. Smith is the opposite, the destabilizing force. They are two halves of the equation that must cancel each other out for balance to be restored. This is why the Oracle tells Neo,
He is you, your opposite, your negative, the result of the equation trying to balance itself out.
Smith is not fulfilling the prophecy. He is breaking the system entirely, which is why Neo must sacrifice himself to stop him. Some fans have theorized that what we perceive as the real world in the Matrix sequels is actually just another layer of simulation. They think the Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, even now, in this very room. A simulation within a simulation. At first, this idea might sound plausible. especially when considering moments like Neo stopping Sentinels in the real world or his wireless connection to the Source. However, when you really break it down, this theory creates far more problems than it solves. Here's why. For this theory to work, both the Matrix and the so-called real world would need to be fully synchronized. That means the outer simulation would need to perfectly mimic everything happening in the inner simulation. It would require a vastly more complex system than just running one simulation. The machines wouldn't gain any additional advantage from having two separate levels of simulation. In short, it would be a logistical nightmare for absolutely no added benefit. If the real world was just another layer of the Matrix, then everything we learn about Path of the One, the Source, and the Machine War would be rendered completely pointless. Why would the architect talk about resetting Zion if everything was just another fake reality? Why would the Oracle set up a plan to break the cycle if the war was just a simulation inside another simulation? Why would Smith's takeover of the Matrix be such a massive threat if he was still inside another layer of control? This theory would strip the Matrix sequels of any real stakes, because every event could just be, oh, but it's still another simulation. That's not compelling storytelling, that's just narrative laziness. The Matrix sequels never give any legitimate reason to believe in this Matrix within a Matrix idea. Every rule, system, and challenge is framed as being part of one real world and one simulated world. Nothing in the films implies that there's yet another hidden layer. This theory only exists because some viewers didn't fully understand how the machines interface with humans outside the Matrix. Rather than exploring the logic in the films, this theory relies on ignoring the established world building and defaulting to, well, what if it's all fake? We see the biggest weakness of these films. They were a little too ambitious in their attempt to build a complex, layered narrative, or perhaps a bit too cryptic in how they structured their dialogue and exposition. For many, the way answers are hidden within intricate conversations makes it difficult to fully grasp the details without deep analysis or multiple rewatches. Personally, I see this as an exciting mystery, one that always reveals new details and connections the more you analyze it. If you've made it this far, I encourage you to rewatch the films with everything we've explored in this video in mind. See if my interpretations, based on logic and human psychology, align with your own understanding of the story. Unfortunately, everything that has a beginning has an end. But before you go, give this video a thumbs up so the YouTube Oracle can recognize that other writers might benefit from it too. Do you think the Matrix sequels work as complex stories, or do they become too cryptic? What is your favorite complicated film narrative, and what does it do well? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to continue exploring storytelling, hit subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Thank you for watching, and keep writing.